Hey guys, welcome to today's video. My name is Vienna Light and I am your local real estate agent in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Today we are going to be starting a new series on my channel that I feel like is pretty necessary to anyone who is interested in real estate, whether you're a buyer or seller, investor, anything like that, or if you are a real estate agent. We are starting this cool new series called the 101 series. That's what I'm going to call it. Pretty self-explanatory. I want to start the series to give an insight on very common, always used terminology used in real estate and giving a brief overview of what each of these terms mean, so that when you do your real estate transactions and when you move forward with getting familiar with contracts, stuff like that, then you know exactly what these terminologies will mean and will hopefully make the real estate knowing and knowledge process a lot easier for anyone who's interested. So for this series, we are going to first start off with a question that, of course, I normally get asked a lot, especially for those of you who are not in real estate 24/7 like I am, and that is earnest money. What is it? What does it mean? How much? And all of the technicalities regarding earnest money we are going to be talking about today. So if you're ready to get started, and it looks like my dogs are right over here, and then let's go ahead and move on. So what is earnest money? Earnest money is a certain amount of money that a buyer puts onto the house when they want to submit an offer to basically express their earnesty in buying the property. And that sounds abstract already, but let me explain. The buyer's agent and the buyer find a house that the buyer loves. Great, that's awesome. Then the buyer's agent will get to work on the offer that the buyer's agent will present to the seller's agent, and they can look over those terms. And one of those terms is regarding earnest money. So earnest money, if you're asking me what's the typical amount that a buyer should expect to put into for earnest money, it's typically 1% of the sales price. Now, technically you can put however much or however little you want, but if you're asking me about a standard amount, that's pretty much what it is. So for example, you have a home that's for sale for $300,000. Your buyer wants to go ahead and put in an offer for the full sales price at $300,000. So the earnest money amount will be $3,000 if it's 1% of the sales price. That is what you're typically expecting when you are putting in earnest money on the house. And this basically, the earnest money, according to technical terminology, you do not have a working contract unless there is some sort of monetary expense. That is partially what earnest money acts as well. So say the seller sees the contract and they say, okay, great, everything looks good, let's go ahead and accept this offer. So the earnest money needs to be deposited 3 days the moment the contract is executed. So that is not including weekends and holidays. And the reason why is because earnest money must be given and addressed to the title company, which is the company that facilitates the housing transaction. So basically, when the buyer gets news that their offer has been accepted, great, you are now under contract for this house. The next thing that becomes very time sensitive is depositing earnest money. And if you put it in your terms of the contract to have an option period, then your option money goes as well. Basically, earnest money needs to be deposited or needs to be addressed to the title company and delivered within 3 business days to make the contract a contract, and the offer becomes a contract. So there are a couple of terms or a couple of things you need to know regarding earnest money, which is first, what happens to it in certain scenarios that could happen with a contract. And so the home is under contract and you delivered the earnest money on time. Great. So say, for example, the buyer has an option period. The option period will be an X number of days. And so the buyer goes through the option period, gets inspection in there, all of that stuff, finds out they don't want the house anymore. Well, if you end up getting out of the contract during the option period, whatever days that you specified in the contract, then you could get your earnest money back. Now, so you get your 1% of the sales price that you put down back when the contract became executed. Now, if the buyer doesn't want the house anymore and it's past the option period, then you can't get your earnest money back. Now, I know some technical things that maybe an agent may know how to do, and this video would just be way too long for me to cover all of that. But basically, the easy way to say it is, if you want to back out of the contract past the option period where there's basically a possibility that you can't get your earnest money back, then you won't get it back past the option period. So that is a thing that buyers need to be very aware of. And another reason why sellers look at earnest money as an important deposit essentially into the house, because the buyer has more to lose if they back out of the contract for the house. So you can go above 1% and make your offer way more appealing to sellers if you really want this house and if you even opt out of an option period. So there are a number of ways regarding earnest money that could really affect an offer. Now, earnest money, luckily, say for example, the buyers go through with the sale of the house, you're at the closing table, that earnest money gets credited to the buyer when they buy the house. So it actually comes back into the buyer's pockets essentially. And you honestly don't lose that 1% of the sales price of the home when you go through with buying the house, because you kept your word. You were earnestly wanting this home. You want to go through with it. You did go through with it. So here you go. There's the money back to you just like you promised. So that's basically how earnest money works regarding how it works in the real estate transaction, the process. Now, another thing that you'll have to know is that earnest money, you don't get it back after the option period, okay? So going back a little bit, you don't get it back past the option period. The contract fell through, you sacrificed your earnest money. Well, then where does it go? It pays the title company who's processing the paperwork to transfer ownership. So all of the work that they've done so far past the option period, all that 1% gets given to the title company to pay them for their time and to pay them for what they've done with transferring ownership to the buyers who unfortunately dropped out, and so they still have to be paid for the work they did. So that 1% earnest money, or that earnest money, goes to them. So that's where the funds and how they work and where they are during the real estate process. And so with all of that, I hope that this gives you a better understanding onto what earnest money is and why it's important and why buyers and sellers should regard this as a very important part of the contract/offer, so you know exactly what this means. And so with that being said, like I said, I'm going to make another video regarding the option period stuff. Those two things, earnest and option, tend to get confusing and get confused with each other. And so that's probably the next one I'm gonna make. But if you like this video or found this helpful, go ahead and leave a like. And if you have something that you'd like to input into this video, go ahead and leave a comment. Share it with someone or people who you think might find this helpful. And if you like this content, then go ahead and subscribe. I update videos and put them up every single week. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!